How you doing, Dr. Umoja? Can you pronounce your name for us?
My name is Akinyele Umoja, and first name is spelled Akinyele. Last name is capital Umoja.
All right. On behalf of Muhammad Speaks, we would like to thank you for granting us this interview and your time. Can you please tell us a little bit background about yourself?
Okay. Well, number one, I want to give my greetings to the brothers and sisters of Muhammad Speaks and the Nation of Islam. Much love to that nation. It's more than an organization, that nation. I want to give my respect to you. But in terms of myself, I'm born in Los Angeles, California. My parents, my mother was from Oklahoma, but her family's really from northern Louisiana. My father is from the Mississippi Delta. My father actually was a minister, Christian minister. He was a sharecropper though until he was 30, and then went to high school. It was a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee. That was a part of the Church of Christ, and so he graduated from high school at 34, and then he went to college and got his bachelor's degree and went to graduate school. He never completed graduate school, but you know, I always would start with that because my mother was a valedictorian in her high school, segregated school, Frederick Douglass High in Wewoka, Oklahoma, a town that was founded by the black Seminole freedmen, which is a whole nother story. But I start with that because it's from them that whatever I do, and from my other ancestors, beyond my parents and my ancestors, that I'm here. And so whatever I've achieved, I have to honor them first. But I grew up there where my family moved to Oklahoma, and while in Oklahoma City, for the first time as a child, I think I understood what this whole piece was in the society about race. There was a amusement park that my father pointed out to me in Oklahoma City, and I asked, well, how come we hadn't gone there? And he said, because we were colored. So, it just kind of shocked me. I didn't understand that. And then I kind of grew up seeing black people being brutalized on TV, trying to integrate schools and things of that nature. We moved back to LA by the time I was 6, and really in Compton, California, and I stayed there through high school. And I think I was influenced by the time period. I was born in '54, so as I was a child, the civil rights movement was really developing. As I moved into my teenage years, like the Black Power movement was very powerful, and I was influenced by those things. Upon graduating from high school, I went to college, UCLA, and I really kind of went because I kind of had this thing in my head that the college is where the movement was at. But I went to college around 1972. It wasn't as hot as it was during the period of the late 60s. And so I left college for a period of time, got active in the movement. I joined an organization called the African People's Party. One of my responsibilities in the movement was to work around political prisoners, and that's one of the things I still am dedicated to work around today. But I organized in the Los Angeles areas. Before I left Los Angeles, I helped found an organization called the New African People's Organization that believes in self-determination for African people inside this country. And it's also a Pan-Africanist organization believing in the liberation of African people around the world. I moved here to Atlanta in 1984. And help get our organization up and started here. In 1990, I helped found the Malcolm X grassroots movement, which is an organization organized around some of the principles that Malcolm X believed: self-determination, support for human rights. We're opposed to genocide. We support, as a Nation of Islam, support reparations for African people. We also fight for the freedom of political prisoners, and we oppose the sexist oppression of African women. So that's what I've been involved in terms of my political activism. Even though I dropped out when I was a freshman, I came back to school. I got a bachelor's in African American Studies or Pan African Studies from California State University at Los Angeles, Cal State LA we call it, and then I came down here to Georgia and went to. For a while, I taught in Atlanta public schools, but I went back and got my master's and my PhD at Emory University. I taught first on the college level at Morehouse, then at Clark, and I've been here at Georgia State in the Department of African American Studies since 1996. So I've been here for 12 years now, and I kind of see myself as combining my scholarship and my intellectual work with my activism. And so I still write about the struggle, and I teach about the struggle, and at the same time, whatever I learn intellectually, I try to bring and contribute to what we're doing in the community also. So that's just a little bit about me.
Okay, that's a little bit, but I appreciate that. Now, right now is a historic election in America, and of course that reference to the Barack Obama presidency. It's the first time an African American has gone this far, and the only other brother that went this far was Jesse Jackson. So I just want you to comment, how do you view the Obama presidency, and further, how do you view our people, or black people in America? Is this if Barack wins, would it be beneficial, not beneficial, and your views on that?
That's a good question. You know, there's always an emotional side to this. You know, an emotional side for me, being somebody who's was born during segregation and saw the things I saw. You know, it's kind of hard to even believe that a black man would be, as you said, an African American or an African descendant in North America, in the United States, would be a candidate for the Democratic Party and will possibly win the presidency. I was thinking today, though. I was thinking this morning because, depending on when people see this, it's the financial crisis going on right now. And I was thinking, man, would I even want that job? What are you inheriting? You know what I mean? But be it as it may, it's kind of hard to believe that. And, when I see pictures of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, I certainly can identify with them. On the other hand, that's the emotional side of me. My intellectual side is really telling me, if you could separate the two, that he's only going to be the president of the United States Empire. And I've been telling people for a while, even before he won the nomination, that a real black man can never be president of the American Empire. And let me just explain what I mean by that, because when I told some students that, they thought I was saying something about him being biracial. That's not what I'm talking about. Biracial people can be real black men and women. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, what I'm saying is he can't have a black agenda and be president of the United States. He would never be acceptable to the majority of the American population, which, we're talking about white people, white folks in America. The whole Jeremiah Wright thing kind of illustrated that, because if you go in the barbershop, you go in the community, what Jeremiah Wright said wasn't objectionable to black folk. It wasn't objectionable. Maybe they don't agree with everything, but it's not anything that anybody would feel like they had to repudiate. He didn't say anything hateful. He didn't curse anybody or call anybody any names like the N-word or MF or anything of that nature. That's not what he did. He stated things that really a lot of people in our community feel is true. But Barack had to distance himself from that, because white America wants, and I think I heard someone say that if he was going to become the candidate for president, he has to be the least angriest black man in America. That's the only way white America would accept him. You mentioned Jesse Jackson before. Now, Jesse Jackson, to many whites, he was too black to be somebody who could become president of the United States. So you really can't have that type of agenda. A good friend of mine, Akinyele, he says that Barack Obama can only be the president of black people symbolically. And so, in other words, the same emotional feelings I have have to see a black man and to see Michelle Obama be the first lady. That's all he could be to us. But in terms of an agenda, in terms of things like reparations, he can't touch that. There's no way that he will be president. And if he decides to change up, and like he's a spook to set by the door, once he gets in office, there'll be a big backlash coming from white America against him. He won't get a second term, and it will never get through Congress. I would dare to say that many of the things that he says he wants to fight for is going to be difficult inside of getting the support of Congress, getting support of the Supreme Court for many of the things he's wants to achieve. Things like taxing the rich and then giving tax relief to the majority of he really says middle America. That's going to be difficult, and that would be good if he's able to do something, but that's going to be difficult given a corporate interest inside of the United States. The United States is a capitalist country, it's a capitalist nation, and the rule generally is that the rich benefit, and that's what we've been experiencing. That's what got us in this that's what got the United States in a financial crisis that it's in. But moreover, I think Barack Obama is pretty clear that the international agenda of the empire he's going to carry out. So that's why he emphasizes things like he's support of Israel. He hasn't said one word about the self-determination rights of the Palestinians. He oftentimes criticizes leaders like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela and calls that Hugo Chavez and that regime there a rogue regime, a rogue nation, where in fact what they've been doing is providing oil at low cost to poor people around the world. They've used their resources to try to make Latin American countries more independent and have more sovereignty, and where they can really eliminate poverty in their countries. In fact, in his own country, he's had a campaign to fight for literacy for people of indigenous descent as well as poor Venezuelans. So when I see a program like that, I would argue we need that. People in the United States would need that. We need those type of things. So Barack Obama, I think, and I'm not saying he's a bad man in any stretch of my imagination, but to be that office is really, it's impossible. I would argue, given the present structure of the United States, for anybody to be in that office and to do what was necessary to bring people of African descent in their rightful state, and not just people of African descent, but indigenous people in this country, the Puerto Rican people, the Mexican people whose land had really been stolen. If we want to talk about that, the southwestern part of the United States is really stolen from the north. It was really, if we think about it, it's northern Mexico. So when we have people talking about folk coming across the border and things of that nature, you have to think about the border that was established through military force by the United States. But there's no way a president of the United States is going to oppose those things. It's going to fight for self-determination. It's no way that a president of the United States, I think, unless it would truly be radical, the president of the United States will fight against corporate interests and give resources back to working and poor people in this country. So if Barack decides to do those things, it would truly be a fight. But I don't think he's going to do those things. Even when he talks about health care, one of the things that one of the scholars, Noam Chomsky, talked about is how the business interests in the United States, some of them want to improve health care for their workers, because if they compare themselves to Canada, they'll see that oftentimes they're losing in terms of their productivity, because oftentimes workers in the United States are sick and can't work to their full capacity. So some corporate interests want health care, and that's why Barack and other members of the Democratic Party are willing to extend that. So again, emotionally, I support it, but in reality, that's not where I think liberation will come from. And I guess really the question has to be, for a lot of people, is on the other hand, if McCain is elected, what would that mean also? Will it be a more aggressive, a more, a continuation of what we've seen with George Bush? Because George Bush has just been brutal. He's just like ignored international law in terms of how he's conducted this so-called war on terrorism. He's really isolated the United States, and he's made it bad for not just poor people in this country, but middle income people, in terms of his as he said, his support of his friends, the haves, and the have-mores, as opposed to he's created more have-nots in this country. And McCain's election, if McCain is elevated as opposed to Barack, will mean an extension of that. It will mean more devastation, not only for people inside this country, but people around the world. And I think this is one of the reasons why there's so much global support for Barack. I was in Argentina recently, and people were stopping me on the street and said, "Do you really think Barack Obama is going to be president of the United States?" So, on another level, I think a lot of people are going to vote for Barack Obama out of fear, because they don't want to see the continuation of this naked aggression against the people of the world in reality. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Oh yeah, that was juicy. That was good. For your, black people in America been through a lot in different generations, different stages. Two-sided question, or two parts. One part: how do you view the state of black people collectively in America today, in 2008, going 2009? And two, per your view, what do you believe is the best route that black people can take for their destiny and to be successful as a people?
Okay, that's another good question. I think the condition or reality of black people in the United States, it reminds me of the movie The Matrix. Okay, and why do I say that? Because I think the majority of black people in this country, we came here as an enslaved people, and then you had the Civil War, and our ancestors fought in that war and moved out of being legally considered chattel or property to having a status on paper of being citizen. But in reality, even though we were given legally the status of citizenship, majority of us were denied the right to vote. The majority of us were kept in servile labor. We were paid, but we were paid very low wages. The majority of us being sharecroppers, like my father, during that time. And even when we moved into the North and we're northern industry, we were kept on the bottom rung of the labor force. So if you consider, we were almost like a colonized nation. We were a colony inside of America. And then lo and behold, I think we got more internal strength, and we got more resources and organization. And so you had the civil rights movement of the 50s and the 60s, and you had this demand for black people to break out of segregation, apartheid, if you will. And then at the tail end of that movement, you had the Black Power movement, and part of what led from Black Power was greater representation in the United States government. When we always think about the radical aspect of Black Power, but you actually had during the Black Power movement these campaigns to get black mayors, to get black people on the city council, to get black representation of black congressional folk. The civil rights movement created access for black people to have the right to vote and things of that nature, but these other movements gave us representation. But it was representation in the same system that oppressed us. Du Bois said that the system that enslaved you cannot free you. And I think one of the things that the American system, United States system, was good at was adapting and creating black representation, but still maintain an oppression for the masses of black folk, which is why the masses, even though you have a Barack Obama, an Oprah Winfrey, a Michael Jordan, you have all these black folks who've been able to penetrate and get the benefits of the mainstream of American society. I think you still have like black people being incarcerated at extraordinary rates, right? You know, there's more black people in prison in America than many nations, the population of many nations in the world, right? It's more black people incarcerated in North America than there are in any country in the world, including any African country. You know what I mean? So you got this large amount of incarceration of our people. You still have police terror. You know, we right now we're doing this from the city of Atlanta, where last year 92-year-old Catherine Johnston was killed by the Atlanta Police Department. Before that, in DeKalb, the neighboring county, it was just, you know, black people being shot by the DeKalb County Police Department. And you know, you have every year these stories, these tremendous stories of black people being shot and murdered, and that's the top. But then on the bottom is still like police still act as occupying forces in our community. And so you have that reality. You have that many of our historic communities are being disrupted and what folks call gentrified, but really is land grab, with New Orleans being the epitome of that, right? After Katrina, not to mention what happened during Katrina in terms of the levees not being maintained in sections of the community or sections of New Orleans that was predominantly black and predominantly working class, that black people were left to die, and now they can't come home. And so their black folks being denied the right of return in New Orleans, which by international law they should be, any internally dispersed people have a right to return to their homes, the right to return to their neighborhoods. So what you have in effect was a form of ethnic cleansing, if you will, American style or United States style in New Orleans, where people were taken out of their communities, dispersed, and not allowed to come home. And it's becoming one of the biggest land grabs in history, you know, but done in a sophisticated and sanitized way. And that's why I say it's sort of like the Matrix, because the way things are done is not as blatant as it was done to black folks during Reconstruction or during slavery, but it's done in a more sophisticated way. And oftentimes you got black policymakers along for the ride making decisions, you know. So you look at the American government, you'll see a Condoleezza Rice, you see a Clarence Thomas. We used to see Colin Powell, you know, even under a Bush administration. So it's more sophisticated than what like my father's generation, what they experience. And so, you know, it's very confusing because you don't see the signs anymore, you know, but the oppression is still continuing to our people. And so how do we get out of it? I think first and foremost it has to be a clear consciousness that we are in fact an oppressed nation within the borders of the United States. And we have to have, once we are a nation, and once we have the consciousness that we are a nation, then we'll begin to cooperate on a fashion and develop policies that's in our best interest as a people. But as it is right now, our people being preached individualism, right? And then we're not conscious that we have to make a move as a nation, particularly since 9/11. There's all this stuff about, you know, we're all Americans, we have to pull together as Americans. And even Barack says that. And he says that we push as Americans, but we don't have an agenda as a people. You know what I mean? We don't have an agenda that talks about reparations for our people. We don't have an agenda that even within the political system, there, you know, people who fight on that arena, they're fighting for an agenda that's for us. That's fighting against the mass incarceration of our people. That's fighting for, you know, people to be returned home to to New Orleans and the Gulf Coast who were taken away from their property. The fights against police terror. As a people, we should be fighting these things. And if others want to align with us, they align with us around an agenda. Or agenda that's articulating our interests. But right now, we just up in politics willy-nilly. I mean, we're hopeful that some of the stuff that Barack is talking about, of course, this whole mortgage thing, if they did have a moratorium on mortgage, on people losing their homes, foreclosures, then that would be good for us. But that's not on the forefront of this buyout. They take care of the corporations, and if some crumbs trickle down to us, that's all right. You feel me? That's all right if some crumbs trickle down to us. So we're still in a position of thinking we're free, but we're really oppressed people. Even those of us who think we're middle class are in that position. So then, that's how I see it right now. We have to see ourselves as a nation, and we have to have an agenda that calls for us to be self-determined and to control our own destiny. Ultimately, I think we should seek real freedom, real sovereignty, real nationhood, and real peoplehood, and not because I'm not hopeful that the powers that be that are in this state right now will ever really look out for us. I don't see that, and I agree with Du Bois that the system that enslaves you will never free.
Okay. Well, Dr. Umoja, as you're aware, I'm a follower of the Honorable Silas Muhammad, the CEO of the Lost Foundation of Islam, and I just wanted to know, how do you view? How familiar are you with his position?
Of course, I wouldn't be as familiar as you.
Yes, sir.
But I am somewhat, coming from Los Angeles, and I know the Lost Foundation of Islam under the leadership of Honorable Silas Muhammad. If I'm aware of the history correctly, really starts up in Los Angeles. So I was kind of aware, I believe it was in late 1970s, of the presence of the Nation of Islam there, and I actually. It's probably not recorded in any history book there or anything like that, but I remember when I was in college actually doing security with the FOI of the Nation of Islam under the leadership of Honorable Silas Muhammad. We combined to do security for Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I'm familiar with folk from that day, even though I wasn't quite aware of who was who at that particular time, but I came to understand later on. When I moved to Atlanta, one of the things that's impressed me the most, and one of the things I think history should give credit to Nation of Islam under the leadership of Silas Muhammad for doing, is work is done on the international arena to fight for reparations, to fight for identity, to fight for human rights. I think that's been most significant, and again, that has to be acknowledged in history. The role those who are in the movement know, and particularly those who are in the movement for reparations know. But I think that has to be documented. When I talk about our people getting a consciousness of ourselves as a nation, one of the things is we have to, in creating that consciousness, is people have to be aware of efforts that are being done on their behalf. But the problem is since we're don't have a national consciousness, and people aren't given that type of information, you're not going to see it on NBC, you're not going to see it on CBS, you're not going to see it on CNN when Silas Muhammad or the Nation of Islam or any of the reparations groups and human rights groups that are associated with it or in Geneva, or if they're in somewhere in the Western Hemisphere at some international body, working and collaborating with people from Brazil and from Colombia and from Venezuela on our behalf. People don't have that information. People not even aware of what the issues are. And so I think, again, credit and respect has to be given to your organization for doing that type of work on behalf of our people. And again, history has to, and our story has to record and reflect that. And not only our history, but our current events. So we're glad that you're taking this and doing this on YouTube and utilizing the media that we do have available to us, because those other media, we can't rely on them anyway. Right. When we're on there, we're going to be misinterpreted and vilified anyway. So we saw how they did Jeremiah Wright. So I'm sure what they would, how they would characterize Silas Muhammad. So this is the best venue to go, as well as the other publications we have, and we just have to make sure we make it accessible to our people and they find out, and we do more work to try to educate around this.
So lastly, I want to ask you, so how do you view as the whole Mr. Muhammad's position on that he thinks we should mobilize as a people and go back home and get a land that we could call our own? I mean, complete and utter self-determination, no compromise, and reparations in the form that we demand that would set us up as a modern nation, not as a lagging nation behind, but on the equal footing with other nations, and having our own government independent of any foreign intervention, and his advocacy that this is a human right of black people in America.
Yeah, I support that. I believe that that is one option to get self-determination for our people. My own view has always been, when I say always, for at least over 30 years of my life, is that we are old. I remember the Honorable Elijah Muhammad always saying that we either should return home or we should be given some of this land of our own. So I've always seen that as my primary dream and option, that some of this earth where my ancestors are buried, Mississippi, and here in the state, in Georgia, in places like South Carolina and Alabama, Louisiana, that our ancestors fought and died for that. And I really don't think that ultimately, since the indigenous people are the true owners, that I really don't think the United States has a superior claim to us. And I think that as part of reparations, that we have a right to that. But we have a right to return home also, because one of the great crimes of humanity was taking us from there. So I see both of those as viable options, and I'm in support of that. I think we have a right to choose, And I tell you this, if it looks like that's going to happen and we're going home to get it, then I'm going home. I ain't staying there. So no, and I do want to have, and I think where we're in unity is that we're gonna have to have a space that we control. So my child or my grandchildren can be the head of state and feel like they got the potential to be that, and don't have to change who they are to get it. We were laughing about the debate that Barack Obama and McCain was having, and I always feel like when Barack Obama's speaking publicly, that he can't really say how he feels.
Yes, sir.
He's gonna have to hide himself. He can't really be, and so that's why if you see him and Michelle on TV, they're always because they have to think about every word. The one time Michelle said for the first time she was proud of her country, and they jumped on her for that. So she was just being honest as a black woman about what she was experiencing. But you can't really do that. I want to be able to live in a society where my children can really say what they feel about things, and they don't have to worry about anybody except for our people, how they feel about what we say. You understand what I'm saying? So if that's in some state, some land that we control here, or if it's back on the continent, wherever it is, I want us to have that. And so I think that's the ultimate goal, and that's where we're in unity, and we're gonna get it one way or the other, right?
Yes, sir. And so then obviously you're definitely down for the fight for reparations.
Yes, sir.
That's where
most definitely.
That's the main number one program of the Lost Foundation of Islam, the Honorable Silas Muhammad, and in his life is for gaining reparations, which he believes will give us the human rights, and then consequently self-determination.
Well, one of my teachers, I didn't mention everything in terms of my biography, but when I was 18, when I worked with the African People's Party, I was asked to do security for a woman by the name of Queen Mother Moore. And Queen Mother Moore, she became one of my teachers in the movement. She was somebody who called for reparations, like since I believe like the 50s or something like that. She worked, you know, she had collaborated with people like Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Umar Obadeli in the Republic of New Africa, and the Yoruba movement with Babo Surgerman and others. And she was in the forefront. Some people consider her the mother of reparations. So since that time, she really educated me. Since 18 years old, I've been a supporter of that concept. And to me, it's like the whole thing about reparations really has to do with, if we don't demand reparations, then we're saying we're not human beings. Because if any human being who's been damaged, then you have to compensate them. You have to acknowledge what happened, and you have to do whatever you can to put them back in the situation that they were prior to the damage. That's what the whole thing is about. If I hit your car, you know, you're a human being. I have to acknowledge that, and if I want any real peace, then I have to, you know, I have to compensate you. I have to offer and complete the task of doing reparations. So now, so we are people, we're human beings. So reparations is something that are due. You know, it's very simple. You know, the only reason that people say that we're not due reparations is because either if they're African descendant or they're European, is because they think that we're not really truly human beings. You know, the state of Israel can get reparations. Japanese Americans can get reparations. Kuwaitis, they say they should have got reparations from Iraq, you know, after that thing that happened in the 90s between those two nations. But we're not really truly human beings. And to me, reparations is not just due for slavery. It's due for Jim Crow. It's due from the stuff my daddy went through. It's due for all the way up to Rodney King. It's due all the way up to what happened during Katrina. Right. Because it hasn't stopped. The form has just changed.
So, right. All right, Dr. Umoja, I appreciate again you granting us your time in the interview, and I really, you've been very gracious in granting. On behalf of Muhammad's Peace, the Nation of Islam, I would like to thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity, and I give my greetings to the hardworking men and women of the Nation of Islam and the leader of the Nation of Islam, Honorable Silas Muhammad.
I thank you, Dr. Umoja. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, my brother. Take care.